There's something about a school that is sort of deeply embedded with human aspiration. It turns out that all of the institutions that exist today that are more than 1,000 years old are schools. And once they get started, they don't assume a life of their own as much as they become like rivers. They cut their own path through time. And the people who come and join them may alter the flow a bit. They may move it here and move it there. But the institution continues on.
What does it mean to be actually engaged in history? What really does it mean to understand that you, little fourth grader, are part of 100 years of experience, and that you're now part of history?
And when you look back over 100 years, you realize that when Mary Lowther Ranney established the school, she's touched the lives of thousands of girls. And I think she would be smiling if she knew how her girls are still developing.
Mary Ranney is kind of an icon, but she was a real human being and a remarkable woman of her time and ahead of her time, especially to start a girls' school that was college preparatory as opposed to a finishing school, when women were marching to get the vote.
The school begins with a civil rights mission. The school begins with the concept that it's time for transformation. Just by the very nature of the idea that girls deserve what their brothers have. And it's very easy to forget that it is in fact quite a radical concept.
While we have these elements of tradition, we also are constantly pushing ourselves to look at new ways of learning and new ways of being.
The minute you think you've got Westridge pegged, there's also and yet, on the other hand, there's this other Westridge that always is in this very wonderful tension.
Miss Ranney was just a live wire. The fact that she worked in the Green and Green brothers as an architect, that's wild.
So here's a woman without formal art or architecture training who graduated from the University of Chicago and came to the West Coast and soon rose to become the head draftsman in the Green Office. And it was in 1913 that Mary Ranney left the Green Office and founded the Westridge School for Girls.
I had an imago, if you will, of Miss Ranney that she was a battle axe. But what's so interesting about it is the more I learn about her, she was wildly respected, but I think even more so, she was really liked.
I think that founding energy is evident everywhere, in every decade of the school's evolution. Westridge is what it is because of her chosen path. Surgere tentamus, we strive to rise. That motto was determined right at the beginning of the school. I mean, that is the history of the school.
And that's one of the through-line values of the place, which has allowed it to stay the same but change. It was about the whole life. It was about define the direction, not about having the direction found for you.
I think Westridge has always done a brilliant job of understanding that in any classroom, it's the teacher and it's the girls. And magic happens. Magic happens.
Classification first.
Alicia would raise her hand. Being in this type of environment, she was in her element. Westridge would allow you to have discipline while at the same time be creative.
My daughter was born with a voice, and I don't mean a singing voice. I mean a voice that needs to be heard. a voice that loves her opinions, a voice to just be who she wanted to be.
It's okay if you're a little quiet. It's okay if you're really loud. It's okay if you love drama. It's okay if you love to draw. It's just a very safe and welcoming environment.
Oh, Hannah.
Lauren was in the 6th grade, and she had stayed up and had done her homework, and some kind of way she lost it on the laptop, and she was just crying and crying and crying. And I said to her, now dry your eyes. You don't want people to know that you've been crying half the morning. And she says, the whole 6th grade class cries. It doesn't matter. Everybody cries in the 6th grade. And I thought, how wonderful that you don't have to hide your tears or your frustrations.
I think there are teachers on our campus who truly have been that charismatic adult in a girl's life that made all the difference. And then, yes, there are characters. There are revered characters in the past, and there are revered characters on campus now.
Where you can't build muscle.
Just purely academically, I never took a class in college that I felt challenged me more than the curriculum that I had at Westridge.
The biggest gift we can give the students is the message that they can do things in different ways and that success is defined by them and who they are.
I had really struggled with math up through the 7th grade, and then I had this teacher, Vaughn Morelli, a legendary teacher at Westridge, and she just set me straight, and that was that.
Juanita Jimenez, who is still at Westridge, teaching ceramics. It was not an area where I excelled in any way. In fact, my strongest memory is Juanita cutting my pot in half and telling me, Katie, I think you need to work with something a little bit more reasonable here.
I went to Stanford University and I studied English. We were reading something, Farquhar or something, and I said, well, this reminds me of part of Volpone the Fox. And the professor, this is a small room, he stops the seminar and says, when have you ever read Volpone the Fox? And I said, well, we had it in senior English at high school.
I came to Westridge. In the fall of '57, I entered the 8th grade, put on my uniform, and I loved it.
The first day, Lauren and I walked the campus and we went into the gymnasium, and she looked at the case that held all the trophies, and she just stood there. And I said, what are you staring at? She says, I want to win trophies for this school.
Gladys Peterson, I believe, was the head when I was in the 8th grade. Libby Herrick was the assistant head. She was Miss Edmondson.
This incredibly elegant, kind of erect woman, formal. And yet, I knew she was absolutely there for me.
When JFK was shot in November of '63, she had a campus full of emotional girls. And we all channeled into the study hall. And she had us sing the hymn, Faith of Our Fathers, Living Still. I can hardly even think about it. And she spoke, and it was just beautiful.
When I saw Libby for the last time, she was dying of cancer. As I was getting up to leave, and I knew I wouldn't see her again, she said, utterly without irony, well, now I've just got to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life.
I was in high school during the 60s.
I remember sitting outside of the lockers as a senior, singing all of the social protest songs of the day.
It was kind of the cusp of feminism at Westridge. We were learning how to be well-bred young ladies. Then there was another part of the Westridge community. We were pretty seditious. We were edgy, we were pushy, and my mother always used to refer to us, the girls, we were thundering saddle shoes.
You know, I think institutions go through developmental stages just as individuals do.
There was change coming, and people don't like change. Fran was the brand new head and began to make some changes.
To really make the school a student-centered institution, and one that truly was committed to the institution's growth on behalf of kids.
I do think a good school is a place where everybody grows and learns, and where there are many, many ways for both students and teachers to be successful.
My flags are like gray.
Howard Swan, who was this legendary Glee Club conductor. Back in my day, we put on little funny, Gilbert and Sullivan operettas, and now they have this full-blown theater program that's absolutely spectacular, but it's the same thing.
This was a place where we were allowed to create and institute programs and give them, musical and theatrical performing arts education, I would say, that is unparalleled.
As a young person who is, trying to figure out my way in the world, I began to use my educational journey as a way to make sense of the world. I realized the power of what these tools could really do for you and could do for the world. It was a profound, profound lesson for me.
Westridge, I think, is particularly good at encouraging girls to express themselves, to be confident, and to really support one another.
Two things immediately come to mind. One is giggling, just laughing until you cry. If you combine giggling and just laughing with really very rigorous academics and the ethos of personal integrity and dignity combined with tremendous warmth and figuring out what each child needs, you create an experience that bonds the kids together.
These were my sisters. I mean, the girls that I grew up with. The thing that I value and cherish the most about Westridge are those relationships.
I think about Mary Ranney and who she was at the turn of the century, how accomplished she was, what a maverick she was. The DNA of an organization starts at the beginning, and it just permeates the institution. Who are you as a human being, and how do we support the development of your human capacities to create a robust human being? To have a very highly developed emotional, intellectual, and dare I say, spiritual life. And that is the mission for me that has always been true at Westridge.
I think it's an affirmation of what can happen when a community does a lot right.
These are the instructions actually.
Teachers didn't have to take their lunch breaks to explain things to me, but they did. And coaches didn't have to take weekends to help me shoot my three-pointer, but they did. My friends didn't have to bake me cakes or, come to my plays or my games, but they did, and that's Westridge.
This sense of goodness and ethical action, that essence characterizes what Westridge is.
I really believe that the virtues of courage, the virtues of creativity, the virtue of goodness, all of these values that are the core values that have seen this school through good times and hard times and all the rest of it, will guarantee that this institution will be responsive to whatever the new century calls upon it to do.
We come into an existing river of humanity, and we take part in it, and we flow through it, and then we flow out.
I strongly believe in life, everybody has to have a place that they can be, a place that they can flourish, a place where what they have to offer the world is welcomed. And for me and my family, that was Westridge. That's why we keep coming back. There's nothing more powerful than a home.